Hey everybody, it's me Argent. I'm here with Nazbol Gang, aka Seamus, and he had wrote a big article about the past, present, and future of modern China and communism and kind of all that good stuff. So he was going to do a video, and I said, "Why not come on and we'll talk about it?" Because it was actually something I was thinking of doing a video on, just because I always do China economy strong, and I'm like, maybe I'll do like a more serious video talking about how I feel about China, because I had done I'll let you talk in a second. I've done a couple videos that I'll put out later about the Uyghurs in Western China, which is a Muslim minority, and they're basically getting like culturally and religiously genocided. And it was actually kind of interesting because I like meme about like the Crusades and stuff, and I actually felt really bad for them when I started hearing about how the Chinese treated them, etc. So, yep. As always, my friend's channel is down below in the description. Please subscribe and give him love. Unfortunately, do you think it was Lefty Pole who mass flagged your channel?
Okay, well, there's a thing with my channel where every single video that I make currently automatically gets in what's the in-between zone between where they take your video off? It gets on like delisted or whatever.
Marked mature content,
yeah,
or something.
Marked mature content now. I will admit the second one probably is mature content because my friend who did it in French used a somewhat derogatory term for black people.
Wasn't he also like yelling to rise up?
Yeah, he was saying like Nazbol Gang of France, rise up in French and stuff.
Okay, that's like if Eddie, that's fair, I guess, for them to.
That one is fair, but the one before that, the one where I say like the United States doesn't have anything to do between Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, where you literally just said that you didn't say anything controversial in that at all. Like even by normie standards.
So I don't know. I wonder because this has happened before, and I've had 2 videos been flagged and been taken off my channel. So before, what I would do is I would pause on my channel for like a month or so without releasing anything, and then my channel's status would get a lot better. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about this on air, but the thing about it is that I might tone down my rhetoric for a while. It is, when I do dress up, I have to admit my rhetoric is kind of a lot more flamboyant than your rhetoric.
But the thing is, I don't know if you ever want to try monetizing your content.
I don't, for that channel, no. I mean, I would go to another channel, or I would create some kind of channel for live streams. But I don't think I think that channel's just too far gone for me to ever monetize anything.
No, but yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. You need 1,000 subscribers to monetize.
Okay, I don't think I'm a hair away from 1,000 right now.
You're not going to get approved, though.
I know. It's surprising that you got approved. I guess
I got approved before.
Oh, the crackdown.
No, before they actually required approval. It was just anybody who applied.
Okay.
But honestly, like for instance, the latest, the video I put up a video the other day, like about NPCs. When I appeal things, they almost always go through.
Well, I don't even.
Anyways,
I don't even fight YouTube about it because I can, like, some of them are, like I said, the second one, the newest one I released, I think is fair. That would happen to it. I mean, I had like all the like third positionist parties of France symbols on it, so those are like hate speech symbols, right? So, but I'm going to post this article because I write articles. I don't ever post it. There was on an older channel that people noticed that I had that I would talk with you on. I had a blog on that channel that was connected to like the Google account for that channel. So I'll have to move some of those over because they're interesting. I actually have a history degree, like as you have a political science degree. I have a minor in political science and sociology too. So I actually am trained. I've read I would say around 5 books about China. I'm not any Chinese expert. And then I've read, I've watched a lot of videos about, what's the channel? China Uncensored. And China Uncensored, you use as a news source for China, and it's, say, better than just wiki walking about China. The thing is that it's from a very kind of liberal, like American liberal perspective. So a lot of things they'll say about China are really unfair. And it will just criticize China across the board from anything it can criticize China on, regardless.
Like bait things?
Yeah, it will criticize China for things that we would never criticize China for, and in fact, we support China doing.
Like the banning hip-hop music?
Yeah, so it would ban, well, not even something like that. It would, like, criticize China if it punished people for, like, drug abuse and said they would basically be like, China should legalize all drugs or something like that, right?
Or let in mass third world immigration.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it would be fifth world immigration.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't think that China is a I don't even know what is third world supposed to mean, second world and first world at this point?
I don't know. I mean, like, I could see people wanting to go to Hong Kong.
Well, China is about, in terms of GDP per capita, China is about a proximity to Russia now. But a part of that has to do to the sanctions on Russia actually have hurt its economy, at least according to Google. I haven't looked deeper into it. So I'm going to go through my article kind of paragraph by paragraph, and then we'll kind of discuss that. Does that sound good to you, or is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, that sounds good. Go ahead, by all means. Okay,
some thoughts on the government of China. When understanding communism in East Asia, one must remember that there is a tremendous linguistic divide between the West and East Asia. Marxism is infamous for its terminology, which is difficult to translate from German into other European languages, let alone from German into an Eastern Asian language. These words essentially have no equivalents in East Asia in the 19th century. So the attempts at translation resulted in drastically different understandings of current Marxists today and Marxists at the time. Another thing to understand is that there was a real schism between East and West communism, greatly shaped by the persons of Stalin and Trotsky. It existed even before them. Left communism, Eurocommunism, Trotskyism, and the socialism of the 21st century all fell on one side, which was xenophilic and believed in a sexual revolution for them in their schism. The Marxist-Leninists fell on the other side and eventually became pro-family after Stalin's rule in the Soviet Union. Marxism-Leninism is also extremely pro-use of force, while the others stress pacifism. Needless to say, their stress of pacifism has not resulted in any other victories for those who claim that Marxism-Leninism isn't a real communism. So I just kind of wanted to talk about if you talk about like a basic bitch alt-right person and they're like, Antifa is communists, they really don't understand what communism is today. Would you agree with that? Or what communism, they don't understand Karl Marx.
Well, Antifa, I've never really thought of being communist. Aren't they just liberal, like radical
They're
social
supposed
liberals?
to be anarchists. They're supposed to be anarcho-syndicalists, I thought.
Are they? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I always thought that they're anarcho-syndicalists. But what I'm talking about is if you go to a university, right, and you have people that's like the no true Scotsman argument where they're like, Titoism, not true communism. Marxism-Leninism, not true communism. China, not true communism. And that they basically define communism as, you know, it's like is socialism of the 21st century, like just really extended welfare capitalism. And you must understand that communism is a technocratic system.
Yeah, just because I know we didn't really talk about communism that much. In Canada, communism tends to be seen as naive idealism that didn't work out, is how we describe it here. It's there's nothing really deeper than that. It's just that it was a good thing, but they were just naive about human nature. They don't really get into any of the other stuff. Um, so what you're saying is kind of there was the side that embraced kind of. Would you say it's kind of like a modernism versus postmodernism thing?
Yes, yes, I would. You have to understand. So you have Auguste Comte. I can't pronounce his name. So he's the guy who had the progressivism and empiricism, right? And of course, the progressivist ideology flourished in South America, and Brazil has order and progress on its flag. Progressivism today, even though when it was formed during the modernist era would have been left wing, progressivism would be like a far right wing, almost fascist ideology. And when you have a technocratic single party state, which guides, which manages the state, manages the culture, and manages the economy, as Marxism, Leninism did, and I would argue the texts of Marx. You could separate early Marx and later Marx here, but I don't want to get into that. Would advocate for a technocratically centrally planned society, which would be very, very far right. And you'll see that when you look at countries like Belarus and North Korea, that internationally they have become to the extreme right of the political spectrum.
I would define North Korea like if I had to put a thing on Wikipedia, I'd call it far left to far right.
I would say that North
Or
Korea is legitimately a third positionist country.
I would more define it as extreme right than extreme left. I think would be more
Well,
accurate.
so if we're gonna, do you want to discuss the DPRK kind of in depth to begin with? It's a
No,
pretty
I just
interesting
want to
topic.
talk a bit about the two different
The two different
schools of thought.
factions of communism. Well, it has to do with,
So is East communism more modernist?
yeah, I would say it's modernist and West communism is postmodernist. That's a really good way to put it. So,
Whereas
you
like
know,
fascism's also modernist, right?
yes, fascism would be modernist, a modernist philosophy, or a realist philosophy as opposed to a so modern monarchist would be a very romantic philosophy. Modern fascism would be a very realist philosophy, if that makes any sense.
Okay, so for those of you who are kind of wondering what these terms are, okay, so modernism is kind of what emerged in the first half of the 20th century, second half of the 19th century. It had focused on the idea of science, innovation, efficiency, progress, all that kind of stuff. It's very much, I guess you could say, aspects of new atheism are kind of some of the last gasps of modernism. Would that be unfair?
Yes, we're getting to the point where it's only post. We live in a postmodernist age. So when you look at uh, college Marxism in the West, so-called cultural Marxism, it is completely devoid of any connection towards class conflict. It is based almost exclusively on the concept of intersectionality, which is like, in colloquial meme terms, the loser Olympics, the privilege Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, so Marxism, orthodox Marxism, Marxism Leninism, Marxism derived from Marx's actual thinking, is historical materialism and examines societies based upon economic division. So classes, obviously, and class conflict is the evolving structure of history. Marxism Leninism seeks to guide this through a technocracy, a single party technocracy, which will force progress essentially through force.
Yeah, the central kind of modernism, you have there's a commitment to scientific rigor, economic development, things like infrastructure, new technologies,
Mhm.
efficiency is very important. There's also the belief that society needs to be continually improved, and I mean that can take different, like, as more kind of, I guess you could say, right wing modernism would be like in fascism. You had, and this is actually probably most what I kind of refer to myself to as reactionary modernism, which was the taking of some modernist ideas like new technology, kind of new forms of government, kind of new economic theories, and mixing it with kind of some reactionary ideas about like gender and race and that kind of thing. But it's kind of more of an objectivist. I guess another term would be structuralist for the same kind of movement.
Yeah. Let me do you want to continue? I have to grab a book so I can tell people to read it.
And it's
Oh,
anti is postmodernism's anti-realist, right? Or is it just
very
extreme?
anti-realist.
Is it extreme nominalism, would you say? Or
Yeah, extreme nominalism is the basis that even archetypes just such as gender or race do not exist, and that they only exist individually, and everything is a social construct.
but only an individual social is it it's do they anyways, but yeah, so that's kind of what I was saying is because I find like what became of Western socialism very different from what became of, yeah, like you said, what became of Asian socialism or even Soviet communism.
Yes. So if you look at um, if you were going to make a country world chart based on what is far left and what is left and what is right and what is far right by country, you get into this problem because when you look at a country like, say, Venezuela, even though they'll say I'm inspired by Cuba and Cuba's inspired by the Soviet Union, and then you look at Belarus, which has continued most of the Soviet policies, what does Venezuela's government type look like and what does Belarus look like? I mean, Venezuela actually is more capitalistic in terms of ownership of the means of production between the state and private investors than the United States is.
What do you mean by that?
Modern socialism or socialism of the 21st century is just a form of social democracy or social liberalism, which is unconcerned about giving the workers control of the means of production. It's primarily concerned with giving so-called outsiders in the progressive stack more money through aggressive taxation. So you
Right.
could describe, before Bolsonaro came to power, I think it would be good to, you know more about Brazil than me. You could describe Lola's system of government to everyone. I think that would be pretty advantageous in describing what modern
Um,
Marxism is.
just from what people in Brazil have told me, they've called him like the king of the poor, and basically he just would loot the Brazilian state to pay off the scum of society, so they would keep breeding and vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
So he would just throw money at people in the favelas and try to get them to have a bunch of kids so he could stay in power.
Yeah. So modern socialism is not connected in any way whatsoever to the working class people. I should say, I'm using the term socialism in the 21st century because that's a much better way to describe it. So if you're looking at
Would that include like European socialist parties, like Western European socialist parties?
increasingly, yes, because it becomes this kind of war where the ruling class, the ruling bourgeoisie, and the lumpen proletariat are allied, and the socialism is for the benefit of welfare for the lumpen proletariat at the detriment of the working class or the proletariat and the middle class or the petty bourgeoisie. where the petty bourgeoisie and the bourgeois or the proletariat, I shouldn't even use these terms, it's kind of a meme. So the working class and the middle class are basically taxed to death and slowly destroyed by the ruling class using the basically like animal classes.
The underclass?
The underclass. They're the underclass. The underclass. And they use the underclass as a bully to them. So in Brazil, another thing is that when the Lula came to power, they just removed all of the criminal justice infrastructure and basically let everyone roam on the streets. And you can see this with like people wanting to advocate prison reform and in the United States and criminal justice reform, wanting to remove all these books, saying that blacks do not commit any of their crimes without defending it, just say it's explicitly racism, and the police. So you have a system where Obama literally had Eric Holder preventing blacks from being arrested or putting stress on police departments so that blacks who commit more crimes in proportion to their population size, the arrest would be corrected towards their population size, meaning that blacks could get away with anything. And then you have things such as white flight, where whites, working class and middle class whites, will flee from countries because the police are not allowed to enforce the law and are not allowed to arrest the underclass. And the underclass becomes a weapon against the working class, to terrorize the working class for
and we're seeing
the bourgeoisie.
Speaking in most Western countries, the white working class votes for whatever the center-right party is, if there isn't a far-right party. Like, I know in the UK, I'm pretty sure most of the white lower working class votes conservative.
Yeah,
now
because even if you support the welfare programs and everything, which I do, you get to this problem. What's more important, enforcement of the law or welfare? Would you rather be killed by somebody breaking your house, raping your wife, stealing everything, and then killing you? Or would you rather not have good health care? You're not going to have good health care anyway. But I mean, like, you don't, normies don't understand that either. But
right.
Okay, should I continue with the rest of my article?
Also, I think they realized that by virtue of wanting to make the state smaller, the conservative parties inherently want to rob them less, even if it's indirectly. Because I mean, if the state just exists to steal from you, then a smaller state is just better.
Yes, I agree. That's why. So libertarianism, believe it or not, like white nationalists would always go to libertarians and be like, whites don't like, or non-whites will never support libertarianism. Well, in Latin America, in multiracial societies, the whites and the working and middle class non-whites who are profitable, like Bolsonaro is very libertarian because it's the same framework applies.
Mm-hmm.
Libertarianism is actually extremely popular in Brazil.
Right.
Do you want me to continue then?
Yep, sure. Continue with the article.
Okay, Marx always intended his philosophy to be a technocracy, aka why it's called scientific socialism, dummy. Western Marxists dropped this and became focused on xenophilia and the sexual revolution as we know today. So our understanding of Marx theories has been greatly skewed because the IRL communists you meet on the street in the Western world have no sympathy or even understanding of Marxism-Leninism. The Chinese, in turn, because of their their translation errors, even more greatly emphasized the need for technocracy within communism, their brand of communism. If you understand this, the Chinese Communist Party in this light, then it becomes quite apparent that under the Chinese translation of communist text and theory, it is totally communist, and there exists no right now I forget the word in the middle of it. There's really no. This is my problem with trying to make things off the cuff. What's it where you say the apocalypse is going to happen tomorrow, and then the day after that, you have to make up something to say the apocalypse will happen later?
I don't
Cognitive
remember, I'm
dissidence.
sorry.
So cognitive dissidence doesn't exist within Chinese communism because the Chinese understood their communism to be a technocracy. Cognitive dissidence exists. So you would think that in post-1991, seeing the collapse of the Soviet Union and the failures of state-controlled capitalism and as the shift towards Deng Xiaoping's understanding of market socialism evolved. So Deng Xiaoping's understanding of market socialism evolved, there would have developed a cognitive dissonance, which most people in the West assume exists. That does not, in fact, exist within China.
Okay, because a lot of people say, well, how is China? China's not a communist state anymore. You have all this capitalism. You have all this, like,
Here, I have to go for a
that kind of
second.
stuff.
If you want to talk
Okay.
about that for a little bit, I have to go for a few seconds.
Okay. So, just on that topic, yeah, I think one of the other things to keep in mind, and he'll get to this when he gets back, but China's has always been a technocracy. I mean, that's basically how their system was. Well, I guess with the imperial examinations, because the Chinese ruling class was kind of different from most ones throughout history, in that China didn't really have landed nobility quite in the same way as other countries did. There were some, but they were kind of a relic. Almost all political power flowed directly from the emperor, and he ruled as essentially an autocrat through a bureaucracy. I mean, there are kind of two general ways you can rule an authoritarian state. You can kind of have it decentralized, or you can have a bureaucracy where there isn't really a independent minor power in between. So yeah, so historically what happened in China was the emperor would govern with through the bureaucrats. The bureaucrats would be elected by passing examinations. So if you were theoretically anyone in China who could pass an imperial examination could get a high paying job in the imperial government.
Do you think that the examination system led to technocracy being a very viable and deeply Chinese rooted thing?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the idea of technocracy is just, and meritocracy are just very, very important to China. And the idea, like the transition to communism is not, I don't think it's very large in terms of like how society's structured. Isn't there still a huge bureaucracy in modern China?
Well, yeah. Yeah,
There's a huge bureaucracy, private-public partnership, political centralization.
So I was going to say a book that you should probably put in the about section that I read that is very instructive is John King Fairbank's The Great Chinese Revolution, 1800 to 1985. And this was instrumental in understanding the Chinese understanding of communism and how Mao created communism and how there was grievous translation errors or translation problems with adopting a very terminological dependent Western ideology into China. I would really suggest any of the viewers and listeners get that book.
Yeah, but to my mind, I just think because I mean, Mao praised Emperor Qin extensively as one of China's like great rulers. And if you look at it on the surface, there is a lot of similarities, kind of like how I think Tsarism, it can be said, led to Soviet communism.
Yes.
Kind of Chinese imperial philosophy, I think in a lot of ways led to led to Chinese communism.
Well, part of this falls into
in fact,
Chinese meta history. So meta history is one of those things that does actually work in China. So Chinese meta history is that you have warlords, then you have unifying This falls into the mandate of heaven. Then you have a unifying dynasty, which is short-lived. So you have the Qin, the Yuan, Wang Mang before the later Han, so on and so forth, and now the People's Republic of China. The Sui. Before you have a prosperous dynasty, right? Then you have the early Han, then the later Han, the Tang, the Ming, therefore, and the Qing, and anything, whatever will come after the People's Republic of China, which will in turn lose its control, its mandate of heaven, and it will devolve, often through decentralization, into a warlord period. So you had the Qing devolved into what we call the warlord period, right? And you had the early dynasties devolve into the spring and autumn period.
Right.
So meta history really does fit into China, and you can kind of see the People's Republic of China being this authoritarian and totalitarian unifying dynasty, similar to the Sui or the Qin, fitting within that. So they do fulfill that role, which is classic within Chinese history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think like China's modern economy, social organization, I think that's all very like similar to how it was historically. I kind of feel like in the post Mao era, they're kind of getting rid of a lot of the, I don't know if you want to call it Marxist trappings.
Well, they're saying that the revolution started in 1911. That the revolution doesn't start with the Declaration of the People's Republic of China. And they're saying that the founder of the Chinese Revolution, which continues through Mao, is Sun Yat-sen. Are you familiar with Cambodia? With Cambodia's ruling party?
Yeah, isn't it like the People's something or other? It's basically the Communist Party changed its name, pretended that they weren't actually the Communist Party, restored the king, and is like Cambodia is a happy country now.
Yeah, so I think that that's what's going to happen in the long term with China. That China will shift out of market socialism and transition into state capitalism. And instead of focusing on Mao, they won't throw away Mao completely, because Mao did unify the country, and Mao did very many important things, regardless of the consequences of the Great Leap Forward and the destruction of the Cultural Revolution. Mao did very many great things in unifying the country and making China a country to be feared by Western powers, where it wasn't before Western and alien powers as Japan. But I think they'll shift towards Sun Yat-sen being the George Washington, if you will, of China, instead of Mao being the George Washington.
Right.
I'm kind of gonna throw away I'm just gonna throw away reading it, because we're just kind of talking about things that have out of the order, so it would be kind of redundant to.
Okay, well, we'll just go back to it if we get off topic too much.
And then
so you think it'll become like because I remember in your article you said the norm for East Asia is dominant party systems, even if they are actually like legitimate democracies. Like, I don't think anyone doubts that Japan's a legitimate democracy, but it's basically a one-party state.
Yeah, Japan is a one-party state by choice. The liberal, is it liberal democratic or just liberal party?
Liberal Democrat.
Which is a social conservative free market party.
Japanese nationalist party.
Well, over time it's become more right wing and more right wing and more right wing.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, sorry, just a side note. So Shinzo Abe is very socially conservative. His wife, though, is like nags him about legalizing gay marriage. 3 guesses as to what her religion is.
Methodist?
His wife. No, she's Catholic, of course.
Oh, I was gonna guess Amish.
No.
Yeah,
Japanese Amish. Okay, so anyway, so yeah, so so Japan is legitimately a democracy. Like, if the people were for whatever reason going to vote for the Democratic Party, or like,
well, they've lost control of the government since the formation of the system, the 1955
twice,
system, twice. And the first one, I think, was less than a year, and the second one only was 3 years.
and that was during the financial crisis, I
Yeah,
think,
it
when
was
things
as a
got really bad.
consequence of the financial crisis, and and they were pretty unpopular.
And this is kind of something I almost feel like it's preferable to have a dominant party system instead of a single party system.
Well, there's
I
actual
do
like,
think. Sorry, go on.
if you have a single party system which cheats, like it is a de facto single party state, but allows limited like contesting of elections. So like pre in Mexico and the current united Russia within the Russian Federation, it allows for the organic creation of policy proposals from these semi-contesting parties, which the dominant party can therefore take, which is interesting. It's kind of an interesting development.
Right. I also think it is nice to have that thing there where if the government goes completely corrupt and crazy, there's a peaceful method of removing it. I think having that sort of Damocles above the head can be good.
Mm-hmm.
That there is theoretically an opposition, because I think we both, you and I, have a preference for dominant party systems,
Yeah.
if I'm not wrong.
Well, I'm deeply critical of. In the article, I make it pretty clear of my criticism of liberal democracy. Very anti. I think that liberal democracy, with the Great Replacement and the consequences of xenophilia, xenophilia, is going to be. We're going to look at. We're going to look at liberal democracy in the global order, the Fukushima global order after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and worldwide globalist democracy in the same way that we look at the Marxist-Leninist states today. Is this
Right.
failed system which has no credibility? I think in the next 10 to 20 years, if you look at there's various ways to call a country a democracy or non-democracy, coded or whatever. And if you look around the world, there has been a persistent decline in democracies in the past 5 years. Democracy seems to be falling all over. And in part, I think that this is the loss of the hegemony of the United States. Many countries just became default democracies because of the United States hegemony. As the United States declines due to its xenophilic consequences of the 1965 Immigration Act and becomes more and more a part of the Americas in general, and as the United States just declines as China becomes more economically competitive, Russia becomes more reasserts itself economically, then it's the consequences that there are other systems to support other than multi-party democracy.
I find, yeah, most countries, I find, even if it's not conscious, are shifting away from multi-party democracy. Um, in Eastern Europe, I feel like in a lot of countries they're just becoming a dominant party system. Like Hungary's like
I think
that,
we should
Poland's
make a
like that.
distinction between a dominant democracy where there are legitimate elections and a crony democracy. So like you should really make a distinction between Hungary and Russia here.
Right, because in Hungary,
Hungary's
theoretically,
like
I'm
Japan.
sure that they wouldn't brig it if the opposition won, but there's not a realistic chance of the opposition winning because people are pretty happy with Viktor Orban.
Mm-hmm. And Viktor
And
Orban is pretty successful.
Yeah, like he's very popular. Like I remember there's some people talking about invading Hungary or whatever because Hungary's illiberal. Actually, he's my favorite politician, probably in the world because he's been able to achieve what he has without resorting to like thug tactics.
Unlike
You know
somebody
what I mean?
like Ludus in Belarus.
Yeah, like I haven't really heard any credible accusations of mass corruption or like I don't like when I don't like a police state. Like I just don't. I don't like government surveillance, etc. I think it's nice that he's able to do most of it through the rule of law and kind of like non-violent. I don't mean to sound like a pussy here, but I think if you can do something in a more kind of a legal, legitimate way, that's probably better than just doing it by force.
Hey, somebody in the comment section was talking about the demographic decline in Russia and the demographic decline in China. So
Yep.
Russia has a birth rate currently. I'm using Google. So Russia has a birth rate of 1.75 births per woman. This was 2 years ago. So that was in the middle of a massive financial crash in the country, and it's rising. Now, I think it'll rise to, I don't think they're going to create a birth rate in an industrialized country. There's reasons for the birth rate that are absent of pornography and absent of capitalism. I do believe these are to blame for it to be below 2, but their industrialization in ways incentivizes a low birth rate. But Russia has a birth rate of 1.75. The United States has a birth rate of 1.8. China has a birth rate of like 1.61. This is 2016. If you just type into Google, you'll get this. Russia and China's birth rate compared to Western Europe isn't bad, and there has been no great replacement in either of these countries. In fact, the Chinese have done a great replacement of their ethnic minorities.
And in Canada, they've replaced a lot of the local population here.
Yeah, so let's look at Canada's birth rate. Canada has a 1.6 birth rate below China's, when China has a two-child policy now where it tax farms the birth of children, which is part of how technocratic is that? You have to register if you're going to have a child.
You can't procreate sex unless you pay China government. You could just picture like, you know what I could see? I could see them giving everybody an injection at birth that makes them infertile, and you have to pay the government money to get like an injection that nullifies it, or something like that. Although that's basically what they're doing in Western China.
Okay, do you want to talk about the how do you pronounce Uyghurs?
Uyghurs?
You know, it's really funny.
I always thought it was Uyghurs. What?
So Thailand has 1.46 births per woman. Thailand, despite never having a single child policy, actually has a lower birth rate than China, which from a Catholic perspective shows that China's massive abortion industry, which has developed as a result of it, is completely needless, because a country which is actually somewhat like equally economically developed as China, Thailand, just 1/10 or 1/13 the size, or what? How much is it? It might be 1/20th the size. It's
You're talking about Thailand or Taiwan?
Thailand. Thailand, which is equally as developed, needed no single child policy, and despite not having any policies for birth curvers, has has a lower fertility rate than China, despite both being about equal in terms of prosperity.
Right. Yeah, and like my understanding is, it's very much dependent upon the cost of living and population density. Is my understanding of birth rates to a certain extent.
Yes, but there's also a thing here. If we think about your experience in Toronto, with unpaid internships, and millennials experiences unpaid internships and housing prices. What are you to expect other than a very low fertility rate?
Right, because to get the white picket fence house would be like, I don't know, like $3 million in Toronto. To get like a small condo would probably be 500,000.
It's essentially impossible for anyone, unless if they like. It's essentially impossible for a married couple, anyone who isn't receiving government support for being a single mother, to have children.
Pretty much.
In a system that has been
well, I mean, to responsibly have children, and this is something I find some people get a little autistic. I was like, oh, it's not that hard. Just fuck a woman and you'll have kids. And it's like, yeah, but some people just are K type and just don't want to.
They want to actually be married and be able to like support their wives and
like, because I don't think having fewer children and investing more in them is like a bad thing at all. The issue is just we have replacement immigration rates.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean? Like, I don't think it would be as big an issue if we didn't. Anyways, sorry, I'm getting way off topic. No, you're right. Like, I think it has shown with China that there was no need for their genocide of the unborn.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Uyghurs?
Oh yes, Uyghurs.
Every time you say that, I think about people that listen to IC or Insane Clown Posse when I was growing up, and you used to call them Uyghurs.
Oh, I always think of Shank Uyghur, or how the fuck you pronounce his name. That cunt.
Is there more people that support him or more people that don't support him that watch it now?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I've told you I used to be like a paid subscriber of his, haven't I?
No.
Oh, I did a really long time ago.
Oh, I think actually, can we talk about the Uyghurs? And I have that's an interesting tangent that reminds me of what I actually wanted to talk about before we got started.
Okay, so do you want to start off with the Uyghurs?
Okay, so the Uyghurs are a Muslim, basically Hapa ethnicity in the far west of China, which are being grievously colonized by the Han, and with the advent of modern technology, are under absolute and total surveillance at all times now. Including the so-called like concentration camps where they're force-fed pork. Right?
Yeah, so, and like, let me just find the article. The article literally, like, that I was reading about, it says that the Chinese government claims that the internment camps are actually vocational camps to teach them career skills and promote economic development, like, so to make China economy strong. So okay, so just to be basic, I'm just going to go through some of this. Okay, so the Uyghurs are Turkic. They're traditionally Muslim.
For a second, I'll be back.
Yes. So how the Han Chinese tend to deal with Chunk Yu-Gi-Oh. Okay, so he says, what was I? Sorry, I'm getting distracted by a bunch of stuff. Yeah, so one of the things the Chinese government has done is they have, in literally every Uyghur household, they have sent a member of the Communist Party to be an adopted family member. So they will just join some part of it. There was one Uyghur in Turkey who got a postcard of his sister standing next to some random Chinese woman, and the postcard said, "We have a Han mother now," and so they have it in everybody's house. They just pay for a state Communist Party official, and they just write down, like, if the person says like Allah be praised, they write that down. if they find a Quran, they definitely write that down. The Chinese government has put QR codes on all of their houses, and they have recorded the DNA, fingerprints, voice recognition, and walk and gait of basically every Uyghur they can in that part of the country. So they literally are all monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Um, and if any of them step out of line, they get deported to camps. And there's millions of people in these camps. Um, and as I was saying, like maybe people find it weird that I'm gonna kind of shill for these Muslims, but I mean, they're not like, as far as I know, they're a native like people. They're from that part of China. I don't like kicking people out of the land where they're their homeland and displacing them. Uh okay, here we go. QR code. Okay, let me just read some of this article. Development comes.
I'm back.
Let's see here. I'm just gonna read this article. Let me see here. This develop. Okay, so China is installing QR codes on the homes of the Uyghur Muslim community in order to get instant access to the personal details of people living there, according to a report by Human Rights Watch. Let me just screen share this. That'll be good. Let me screen share this because this actually like bothered me a lot. I was not expecting to be as bothered by this as I was, but it is like really disgusting what they're doing there. Um, and, I mean, Muslims are not. I mean, it's their home. Um, it's their home. Like, where else are they supposed to go? Okay, here we go. So there is a picture of. I guess if I'm going to be doing this on stream, I should do this song. China economy strong, building strong economy, economy for China, for China. Anyway, so China install QR codes on Uyghur Muslim homes as part of a mass security crackdown. Like, look how fucking crazy this is. We got some like Communist Party official with his iPhone. Um, let's see here. Let's see here. Officials reportedly scanned the smart doormats with mobile devices before entering homes to monitor the inhabitants. The Chinese government, the campaign of repression. Okay, yeah, authorities claim the codes, which in some locales feature on every home, help with population control and delivery of services. Starting from spring 2017, in every home where one enters, there's a QR code. Then every 2 days or every day, the Communist Party officials come and scan the QR code so they know how many people live there. And starting around then, they would ask our visitors, "Why are you here?" So like they go there and they do a head count every day um to see how many people are there. And if there's more than the number on the QR code, then they start like interrogating them or arrest them. Let's see here. Four residents say authorities are also collecting biometric data such as DNA and voice samples when people apply for passports or ID cards or during police interrogations. Let's see here. She added people were forced to walk back and forth at police stations so officials could record their gait. Beijing has denied that. Okay, so the UN has said that China is believed to be holding up to 1 million ethnic Uyghurs in a system of internment camps in Zhuangjiang where they undergo political education. Beijing has denied such camps are for political education, insisting they are vocational training centers, part of government initiatives to bolster economic growth and social mobility in the region. So literally death camps to make China economy strong.
China economy strong, building strong economy for China.
Okay, they aren't allowed to use Islamic greetings, their local language, and people who have relatives living in other countries like Turkey are arrested. Let me see here. Sorry, go on.
Okay, so what the Uyghurs face is essentially annihilation, and I really go through this in my article. No communist party in East Asia has ever been overthrown. Cambodia and Mongolia transitioned out of the communist ideology, but the parties remain in institutional power. So this goes into the Asians, East Asians have a natural sense of conformity that we can't understand unless you are one of them. It's worth noting the East Asian societies have never created a high turnover democracy. I'm trying to get to where this is, but would you agree that East Asians are biologically speaking conformist, much more than every other culture group?
Yes, the absolute worst shit libs are Asian females, second generation Asian females.
If you go into Anglo-Saxon countries, despite East Asian countries being extremely socially conservative, East Asian females, is this the same for Austronesian females?
We don't really have many. Yes. Yeah, I think it's similar.
Okay, well, East Asian, they really conform to a state ideology. So if you look at it, Asians in the United States have voting patterns which are more severe than not as severe as blacks, but more severe than Hispanics. They vote very heavily for the Democratic Party. Something like 75% of them do.
Right.
They are very, very conformist. I think that's something. But in the conformistism of so that's part of the reason that they don't have any high turnover democracies. I mean, to a certain extent, a country like South Korea has only been a democracy since 1988. So they haven't been a democracy long enough, or Mongolia has been a democracy since 1991. So they haven't been a democracy long enough to see very many turnovers. But in Japan and Singapore, the longest standing democracies in the region, for almost their entirety, despite having free elections, one party has dominated it. One party has dominated the ideology, and people just don't care. In the West, regardless of people just vote the other party just instinctually. They just flip things over. They just flip the parties over. When East Asia, because of their natural conformity, they don't. Where I'm getting at is that as long as the Han Chinese are happy with their government, they're happy with the prosperity that the People's Republic of China has, they have no reason to question the rule of the Communist Party of China. And that's something that Westerners high on neoliberalism, high on Fukushima, simply cannot understand.
You mean Fukuyama?
Fukuyama, sorry. Maybe they're high on Fukushima, but high on Fukuyama, they do not understand that the Han Chinese aren't going to overthrow the People's Republic of China as long as China maintains social order and it maintains prosperity. And for the Uyghurs and the Tibetans, China will not stop their genocide unless if the People's Republic of China is overthrown. The immense weight of the population centered upon them, of the Han Chinese, will simply annihilate them. And there's nothing that they can do. And the other thing is that because the Chinese invest so heavily with their soft power in, say, a country like the United States and California or in Canada and the United States are never going to do anything because China will just threaten them with their soft power and multi-party democracies, especially in the case of Israel and Saudi Arabia and the United States, do nothing against the soft power of money in their multi-party democracies and their foreign policy. So they can't be armed. They can't be criticized by other governments. They're basically sitting by, and there's nothing they can do as this minority because what is Tibet, like 30 million people, 20 to 30 million people?
Is it that many?
Yeah, it's that many. They're going to just be annihilated because the hand won't stop unless the government is overthrown. That's just the reality of this. And if you look at the Falun Gong and the Christians, while they're not being demographically replaced because they're Han Chinese, the WeChat system of constantly watching everything and then creating the social credit system, monitoring everything you do, creating a cash. They want to create cashless or a paper money-less economy.
The UK is pretty much already there.
Yeah, they're not going to fight back against that unless if social stability and prosperity is destroyed. So the Chinese and the Falun Gong face doom. They're doomed because of the way that the Chinese act as a people.
So long as the people think the government has the mandate of heaven, and so long as the government continues to make China economy strong.
Yes, exactly. The Tibetans will be annihilated as long as the government maintains China economy strong, aka mandate of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
China economy strong.
And like, I'm not the biggest fan of Tibetans, but it is kind of sad to see them just kind of get completely exterminated and replaced.
Anyway, do you want to go into something I find pretty interesting? When we both entered university, we would describe ourselves as men of the left. This is what I wanted to start out with what communism is in universities when I was talking about that. Could you kind of explain? I mean, you've done it in like your About Me videos or whatever, but
okay. Historically, I thought that I was a leftist. It's interesting because I always had some views that, I don't know, you consider, like, I've always been very pro death penalty, for instance, and I've always been like I've always really disliked divorce and some things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always favored like a strong, like, not a lot of leniency towards violent criminals. But on like a lot of other issues, like mainly economic ones, like state involvement in the economy, public services. What are kind of some other things I've talked about? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know.
Just a lot of stuff like that. It was really, I guess you could say, kind of more nationalism, that I kind of just believed in society collectively working together on the basis of an identity to serve a common good.
Mm-hmm.
So, and kind of that, and a fair deal for the working class, and that like working class people and like upper class people would kind of get along. And I guess just kind of things like that. And when I went to university, I found that the self-described left had absolutely none of that.
The xenophilia and the
xenophilia is a really good way to describe it.
Well, there's xenophilic. I mean, if you talk to somebody where it's like, okay, if they literally say there's no such thing as Western culture, or white people have no culture, how do you respond to something like that? You're just an absurd xenophilic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
because I was extremely anti-multiculturalism when I thought I was a man of law, and I was actually against it for kind of left-wing reason. Well, what I considered to be kind of collectivist reasons, because I thought it undermined the ability of a country to work together, which it does. But I guess kind of from more of a I don't know, an economic standpoint.
Okay, do you remember the movie Religious?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember when he goes to the Netherlands and he's talking about like Islamic terrorism, and he's like, these Arabs, they have to contend and they have to assimilate in the Western society. I was like that. I was like, okay, so I've been reading Ann Coulter's book, not Alien Nations, Peter Brimmel's book, Adios America, where she talks about the Hmong, where they're gang raping people, and when they go through a liberal judge, when they gang rape somebody, they'll be given English lessons because they'll say, in our culture, we're gang rapists. So my understanding as a leftist when I was a leftist would be, no, our culture is superior. You know, punish them. Rape is wrong no matter what. But a modern leftist with a xenophilia believes that racism is a greater sin than rape and murder.
Right, which was kind of the perspective. Because I was actually, like, some of my me trying to kind of be consistent with my leftism actually led me to support neocolonialism, because I thought that was the only way to civilize the shitty parts of the world, was to just take them over and just kill fucking savages until
Well, I mean,
they
I mean, of course I'm very anti-neoconservatism, but neoconservatism is a liberalism. You can see how it is from disaffected liberals or disaffected leftists or whatever, you know, the Jewish Trotskyites, I guess. But I mean, neoconservatism says we're going to invade these non-liberal places and impose liberalism on them because it is a better system, right? We're going to blow the fuck out of Iraq and impose liberalism on them because cutting people's hands off sucks. Like, that's just wrong. Female mutilation is wrong. Genital mutilation is wrong, and it should be absolutely banned. But the modern xenophilic leftism is like, why are you persecuting these Somalis that are cutting off these girls' clitorises? What are you, a racist?
Part of my issue actually was with the Iraq and Afghan wars was I felt they didn't go far enough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would have preferred if they had it been actual colonial projects that were like I just didn't
directly controlled by the United States.
Yeah, like, because my issue with Afghanistan was we went there to fight religious extremism or whatever, and it's called the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So it's like, what was kind of the point from that perspective? It didn't deliver on anything. But yeah, basically, I just thought a lot of these countries are morally disgusting, and the only way you're going to deal with legitimate rape culture in Africa is if you take over the country, put it under a military dictatorship, and just kill all the fucking rapists until they learn not to. Which I guess was kind of how I felt about. That's how I felt kind of about Islam too. And I kind of viewed, but no, I think neoconservatism, and this was because when we're talking about international relations theory, I was trying to explain that neoconservatism is a form of liberalism. Did you study IR, international relations theory, at all?
No, I didn't. My university was really small, so it was just like, we didn't go. I mean, I only have a minor too.
Okay. But yeah, so there's this thing called in international relations theory. There's a bunch of different ones. There's like realism, constructionism, liberalism, which is kind of a more moralistic one.
Oh yeah,
and neoconservatism is a form of it.
Yeah, it absolutely is, because realism.
But they were in denial about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, neoconservatism is bad because that's what Bush is, and Bush doesn't like gay marriage, so it doesn't matter if he agrees on everything. He allows limitless immigration and whatever. But anyway, when I entered university, right, I was like this Chomsky reading fucking left Marxist fuckoid. And I read like books like Empire, the autonomous book from Nagari, and I read what's the Invisible Committee's book that that fucking Mormon was against. But anyway, I was reading like far left books, and I was reading like I wouldn't call Noam Chomsky far left. He just likes to claim he's far left, probably to be.
What even is Noam Chomsky? Doesn't he just?
We could talk about Noam Chomsky and because I have a lot to say. I mean,
we could talk. We'll maybe
so
just
far away from the title, but I really think that this is like probably really entertaining, and I'm having a fun. But so I was just reading all this stuff, and I'm just like reading all this stuff. But my thing is that I'm a very empirical person. just by my nature. So if I talk to somebody, so today I asked somebody in a message, what do you, so that is a pretty like Bernie bro guy that I'm friends with in real life. And I'm like, with the recent conviction of Fields as first-degree murder, I'm like, how do you justify this as anything more? Like, how is this not manslaughter? I mean, I think it was because of where the court is. I think he was going to be convicted no matter what. This is the way that courts work, right? But the idea that it's first-degree murder is exclusively held up by a single meme that he shared. That's it. It was premeditated. But when I talk to this guy, he's just like, he intended to kill all these people. But why? How would you intend, if you wanted to run over people with a car, why would you not rent a massive pickup?
Also, how is he only able to kill? Is he like the Elliot Rodgers of Buses for Peace?
Yeah, I mean,
like he really couldn't kill more than one person.
Well, I mean, he slammed into a car. He did. Like, that's, if you're intentionally going to kill people, why would he slam into a car and then not go around people? And not a crowd of people. Why would he not go around after he slammed in the car and be like, I fucked up, man? Why wouldn't he swerve over the people that are wounded? It doesn't make any sense for being premeditated at all. But when I talk to this guy, he's just like, premeditated, first-degree murder, deserves death penalty. And he's probably a guy that doesn't believe in the death penalty. And that is something... That's something with a modern leftist that may, like, that's what shifted me towards the right, really, is my empiricism. It's just that, I probably actually hold the same, like, there's a period where I liked, what's his first name, the libertarian? Thomas Woods Jr. There's a period where I liked Thomas Woods Jr. and I was kind of swerving towards like believing in free markets, and then I went back to where I was before. So economically, I went completely free circle. But I mean,
I think that happens with a lot of people in these circles, just because a lot of the like gateway people happen to be libertarians.
Yeah,
like people like Molly or something like that.
When I just came across in university, just like, no, empiricism, they just have no conception of empiricism. So when I was in high school, at the very end, when I was in high school, Trayvon Martin happened. And I was in this debate class about social issues, and they were all debating Trayvon Martin. And I remember distinctly, I was the sole person who said, we don't know what happened. Like, I didn't even say, maybe Trayvon Martin is assaulting him. They all just assumed like what the media told them, and they're just like, black man good, person who killed black man bad. And it was just like, I just remember distinctly, like, how do you know this guy wasn't on like crack and just assault? We know what happened today, but I'm like, how do you know that this guy wasn't just jumped up on crack and started punching this like? It's real. I just thought in my head what Trayvon Martin was when it first came out, before we knew anything, was it was probably like some cracked up kid who was going out after like this guy, you know, like people that LARP as superheroes in real life.
Yeah.
It was basically this cracked up guy was going after this guy that was LARPing as a superhero in his real life, and he got cornered, and he was scared, and in self-defense he killed Trayvon Martin. No, it's actually much better than that. Like, but that's what I thought happened, judging even from the extremely biased news reports. That's what it looked like to me. But I remember being mobbed by 20 or 25 odd kids as a sole person, just because of being like, he's not guilty yet, dude. Like, there's been no trial. We don't know all the evidence. And they're just like, this is racism right now. How can you be that? You're a racist.
They edited the 911 call.
Mm-hmm. And it was just this screaming, and it's like, this is him beating up the black kid. And it was
no, he changed it so that he said there's this black dude.
Oh, yeah.
When, like, it was because the operator had asked him. But, no, like, it was also, because even when I took what I thought were kind of socially liberal positions, like I was shocked when I was the only person in a lot of my classes who was against female genital mutilation.
Weren't you the only person that was against abortion of women just because they're women? Or girls
Yes.
because they're girls?
No, that was an interesting case because I was completely pro-abortion, and I said, and they like all the people around me were like, "No, it's sex selective abortion's bad." I'm like, either it's all bad or none of it's bad. It doesn't like I don't see why it matters. Like, but it's discrimination against women, and like, well, they aren't people, so why would it be discrimination?
Yeah, I mean, by the when I already crossed the Rubicon, and this was at the end of college. But I remember when Trump was elected, and he immediately what he talked about. So it would be like within the semester itself. When I was in political, because I did all political sciences to pick up the minor at the end. It's the way my university ended up being. So I had like all the end was just pure political science classes. So it was just like all these people that I had classes with before were extremely socialist. And then as soon as Trump was elected, they were like, they had every single argument that I remember libertarians ever had against protectionism, against any kind of government interference. They were like dyed in the wool fucking Rothbardites.
Oh, they got angry that Trump attacked the banks.
Oh yeah, stuff like that. They got so anti like protectionism when beforehand they were like, yeah, Hugo Chavez good.
Left-wing nationalism used to be like a big thing, like at my university, where they praise like third world nationalist movements and protectionism and stuff. Remember when the left used to care about jobs being shipped overseas?
Oh yeah, well that's why
And
I
now
was leftist. This goes into like it's when I was like a 10-year-old kid. I was like neoliberalism bad. Well, I value autarky a lot, and it was just like in my primordial, like even like a 7-year-old, I'm like shipping jobs overseas because is bad. Autarky is good. And I remember the first political issue that ever like not like so you have like liberal teachers that are like, we gotta stop the destruction of the rainforest. I'm like, I don't care. But it's like jobs are being shipped overseas. I'm like, holy fuck, we have to stop. Like a 7-year-old, I was like, this is the worst thing I can ever imagine. Like growing, well, you can see where I am now. Like that's the thing that offended me the most. But I remember like being really upset with that, and like all my political views until like for a very long time were centered around that. And I just remember like going and it's just like, yeah. Remember when Obama said like these are jobs you don't want back? And I'm just like, and then like in university the liberals would like mock you if you're like this is bad, and then they'd be like, but Obama says it's good. Obama Lord.
Obama's your daddy.
Daddy Obama. Are you playing a game?
Michelle and Baraki. What?
Are you playing a game?
Yeah.
Fucking, you're not committed to the live stream.
No, I know it's just
is there anybody? Is there anything that we have like 51 plus people? Is there anybody in the comments that has anything they want to say? They want us to ask since we're here
about our this rambly.
Yeah. Well, I like being rambling. I don't know. Maybe we're
we covered China. We covered a lot of stuff.
We're like really autistic at the beginning. I was like being like very autistic. We have a lot of people watching now, maybe because it's just the time. But
it's the time, and people like my co-host. Okay, so let's start looking at some of these. Are you still a monarchist? I don't know, not really. Oh, here's one. Why are you
like sympathetic after Meghan Markle or whatever?
Why did you pick Nazbol instead of like fascist or something?
Because the Nazbol meme. I thought I could get a lot of traction. Well, first of all, I probably should never say this, but okay, I'm a left-wing, very socially conservative, believe a single-party state, and tend to be economically left-wing, support very regulated economies, like state-planned economies, but not state-owned, if that makes any sense. So I'm not, like, I don't support recreating the Soviet Union, but I support government interference and government led. So like an Asian style state capitalism is very good to me, especially if it has strategic ownership of certain. So I would support a railroad monopoly of the government. That seems pretty awesome to me. That's something I would support. I support like direct ownership of the means of production of a lot of like heavy industry. So is that what a lot of people are asking me? I don't support the recreation of a Soviet-style economy. I very much do like Belarus, but I believe China is good in some ways. I think market socialism has been extremely successful. Now, if I don't know, I mean, the United States is kind of fucked. Is my own country. I don't even know. Like, it's just survival at this point. But if I broke away and we were in white ethno state or some kind of breakaway republic, for me, like Cascadia or something, then I would actually openly advocate for that state market socialism, or very the gray line between market socialism and state capitalism. That seems to be the most effective economic system. It seems to have a lot amount of autarky, where your government is not susceptible to soft power from international entities and foreign governments like Israel, which will be against it. I don't know. Is there any other questions you want to dig up out of there?
Yeah, so you just say you're a third positionist in general?
Yeah.
Because so that could
I'm
mean
not
like
going to use the word fascism because it's an F word. Like it's a dead word. I'm going to use third positionist. I mean, Dugin calling it the fourth position is cool, but is an American and is Atlanticist arch enemy of Eurasia, right? I can't advocate for Eurasianism. I can be influenced by Dugin, but I mean, I'd have to be like defect to Russia and live in Russia to become a Duginist.
Oh, so I just wanted to read Irish Cream super chats. Washington Negas rise up.
Rise up, rise. Establish the Cascadia.
Yeah, up in the northeast. Okay, let's see here. What are Chinese nail houses?
I don't know what that is. This guy, Torture Room, do I support conscription and obligatory military service? Yes. I believe, like, what's the system that Austria has?
I think really people stay in the army for like 2 years or something.
It's like a year or 2 years. If you could have like, so like if you had like some kind of corpse that was conscripted and that they improved infrastructure around the country, and you could choose becoming part of that or the military, and that would be great. I'd support that 100%.
Yeah, I don't see why national service would have to be military. There's all kinds of other important things you could get kids to do to build character. Thoughts on pathos? I don't know. I used to read the website off and on back in the day. I don't have too much to say about it.
It's been a long time since I read any of that.
Thoughts on Messianic Judaism?
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
It's like Judaism, but they acknowledge Christ as the Messiah.
But do they acknowledge Christ as part of the Godhead? Is it like Aryan Judaism?
I don't know. That's interesting thought.
Yes, that's my cat. He's fluffy and he's cute.
I still think you need to get a little like communist hat for him.
Yeah, that would be so spoiler warning, I'm not an Asian, like Southeast Asian girl, like a Vietnamese girl. So now that I'm doing these live streams and I can actually see that picture like all the time, I'm gonna have to change my like profile pic because it's kind of getting annoying to me. Because I like the meme of her like staring into the camera all smug like an anime girl, but she's an actual real person like with a communist uniform and everything. But at the same time, I don't want to have habit children. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how based was Salazar? An 11. Salazar is so fucking awesome. I love Salazar with all my heart. Anyway, Salazar like fucking went to the United Nations and was complaining about India taking back like Goa. It's so fucking base, dude.
Okay, so some Messianic Jews are Trinitarian, some are not Trinitarian. It depends.
Okay.
But I don't get like why it would be of interest to me, really, because
I
I'm
don't know.
ethnically Jewish. What religion? Okay, what religion is Nazbol? He's Catholic.
I'm more traditionally Catholic than Argent is. I tend towards Fenianism. In the past, I actually held Sedevacantism. Sedevacantism, I don't hold that anymore. I think that the Ad Orientem Novus Ordo Mass is quite good, though, and I don't think that you're committing any kind of sin by going to the Novus Ordo. And I think most of the people that go to this, I support the Society of St. Pius X, but most of the people that go there, they'll literally hiss in your face if you go to the Novus Ordo, and that's like unacceptable to me. Because the Novus Ordo is a valid mass. And Sunday obligation goes over the head of like Latin mass. Like if you can't go to a Latin mass, you have to go to a Novus Ordo for Sunday obligation. I don't know. So if somebody's Catholic and they're wondering what that means, that's kind of my positions on Catholicism on short, like in these circles at least.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Any more questions from the chat for either of us? Have you been to a Byzantine divine liturgy?
Me? No. Why do you want me to? Do you think if I just see what a divine liturgy is like in person, that I'll just suddenly become Orthodox and I'll just drop all my long
I think he means Byzantine Catholic.
Oh. Do I think? Okay, somebody asked me like, do I think a controlled economy will work with AI? No. I don't think. Well, first of all, I do not support. Like, I'm very sympathetic to Ludditism. Yeah, big brain. Like, oh yeah, go Pol Pot. I'm very sympathetic to Luddites, but like, I don't support any kind of Venus Project kind of shit. That's like, why would you want to put like, if humans are less efficient than AI could be in some kind of like future, like we can't create an AI as smart as a cat like in 10 years. Right, I guess we could probably create an AI like with the plastic women. We'll create an AI.
Never make an AI as smart as waffles.
Yeah, but we'll never create an AI as smart as a cat. But we may be able to create a plastic woman as smart as a thought. But anyway, why would you want, like metaphysically, why would you want to put something that isn't human over power of people that are human? Why would you want to put AI over you? Like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want? I mean, it could be more efficient. I'm not putting that in the best terms. Do you understand what I'm getting at, Argent?
Well, people want to be ruled by angels or by God. So yeah, I think the idea is to create something that doesn't.
It's something God creates can be perfect. Something that man creates will not be like what God creates.
Right. But a lot of these people don't believe in God. But I think the idea is to kind of create something that lacks human emotions and kind of human biases and can see the world more objectively. The issue with that, though, is it's going to just be a reflection of whoever programs it.
Okay, so if you have a problem with what the NSA is doing, and and what China is creating with WeChat and a cashless economy, that's like baby steps towards like the Venus Project. I mean, that's very, very baby steps. Why would you support something like the Venus Project then?
So anti-troll is saying that a centrally planned society by an AI would be very efficient. It would eliminate poverty.
At what
And
cost? How do you know that? Okay, how would you? Let's take like the meme that Sam Hyde said. How do you know they're not just gonna kidnap you like a bile bear and just like fuck up your body, like of millions of people, just to like cure diseases? Why would you want something that isn't human over control of humans? That doesn't view you. I mean, think about something like Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton views you as a number, right? Why would you want something that isn't even inclined to viewing its own daughter? Like, can't even have a daughter like Chelsea that it views as a human, right? Like, it doesn't view anything as a human. It views everything as a number. Why would you want that to have any control about you, over you?
Torture Room asked, do you support the Human Instrumentality Project?
I like the end of Eva. I mean, I really love Neon Genesis Evangelion, but I mean, I when I watch the end of Eva, when I see it, Shinji's in hell at the end. Okay, that's what instrumentality is. Shinji's in hell in the end. That's it. I mean, he's literally in hell, banging Asuka forever, in complete and absolute suffering amongst the Tang. Is that what you want? That's what you get if you have a Venus Project. Somebody was asking me about Ted Kaczynski. Yeah, Ted Kaczynski's views are very interesting. I mean, what was Ted Kaczynski like? If MK Ultra is real, which I'm immensely skeptical of, then Ted Kaczynski was MK Ultra. I mean, like, use the propaganda of the deed. I guess it's based because I thought he was gonna blow up. Didn't he say he wanted to blow up Noam Chomsky? It's pretty fucking awesome. I don't support propaganda of the deed. Propaganda of the deed is bad. Do not use propaganda of the deed. But Noam Chomsky also is fucking gay as hell. That's what we were gonna talk about, is Noam Chomsky, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I have a couple minutes. Did you want to talk about Noam Chomsky?
Yeah, we were gonna talk about that earlier. So
yep, go ahead.
Noam Chomsky is the most racist person that I've ever read in my entire life.
Wow.
Noam Chomsky is far more racist than like Luda Studdard or I mean, I read Philip. I haven't read Lynn, and I tried to. Okay, no, Noam Chomsky is still more racist than the Turner Diary, because Noam Chomsky, like, so in the Turner Diary, whites have control over themselves, right?
Right.
Like, non-whites control their own actions, have autonomy. In Noam Chomsky, non-whites have no control over any of their actions. They have no autonomy. And the United States directly controlled every single right-wing regime throughout the entirety of the Cold War. And every single genocide that happened since 1945 is a direct result of, well, no, probably beforehand. Like, the Holocaust was the United States' fault because apparently Wall Street supported the Holocaust somehow. Somehow that makes sense. Everything that ever bad happened is because white people.
The Taiping Rebellion was because of Britain, I guess.
Yeah, the Taiping Rebellion was because of Britain. Okay, everything that is ever bad that has happened to somebody. I mean, I guess Chinese are probably white technically. With some of them are with melanin, and Japanese are white with melanin. But anybody that
he blames
Western Caucasian.
No, he blames. Doesn't he blame Japan for emulating the West?
Oh, I never read that, but I read a fuck ton of Noam Chomsky books when I was like the last 2 years of high school and the first year of college. So Noam Chomsky believes that, for instance, Pinochet was a figurehead, and the CIA directly controlled Chile. Okay. Okay, so the United States had to. So Noam Chomsky believes the United States had to directly financially support Cambodia. Well, that's another. The United States is guilty for any famine that happens in any country the United States doesn't support, just because the United States doesn't support it. So the United States has an obligation at all times, according to Noam Chomsky, to financially support its enemies to prevent them from having a famine. So the famine in Cambodia, the so-called Cambodian genocide, even though it's not a genocide, unless you're talking about the genocide of ethnic Vietnamese within Cambodia, which Noam Chomsky, of course, grossly denies. He denies the Cambodian genocide. Anything that bad happened in Cambodia is because the United States didn't send welfare to Khmer Rouge.
Right.
The Shah was a figurehead, and the CIA directly controlled Persia. Every single state.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it's true. He did think that, yeah, that's what I used to think too, because I used to read Noam Chomsky.
He literally says that every single bad thing that happens to a non-white is because non-whites have no control over themselves, have no control over their actions. Only whites have autonomy. And and every single state that isn't like, well, you never talked about the Soviet Union that much, so it's kind of interesting. But every single state in the world is like directly run by the CIA, and the CIA just kills people to kill people. I'm not pro CIA or anything, but Noam Chomsky. I mean, I'm not very philo-Semitic. Okay, I'm not. I used to be pro-Israel in the sense of Israel is a Western country, and Israel is being attacked by non-Western countries, so we should support Israel in the sense of like, I'm not going to be for an embargo towards Israel because it's like having an embargo against South Africa, and we know what the consequences will be if the Palestinians take control of Israel, so on and so forth. But Noam Chomsky is a Jew that's against Israel. Like, how can you judge a person who is a Jew that's against Israel? How can you judge somebody that actively is promoting for their own race to be annihilated? And if Israel acts in certain ways, Israel will be immediately annihilated. In the ways that Noam Chomsky acts, if they went through with Noam Chomsky says, Israel would be immediately annihilated. No doubt.
What does he want? Citizenship for all of the Palestinians?
He wants a two-state solution, but it would amount to like them removing all the walls, Israel abandoning all of the West Bank, Israel like having what are they called? What are the communes in Israel called? Kibbutz. He would have a kibbutz-based economy shared with Palestinians. So what it would result in is like mass immigrations from all of the Middle East into Israel to get welfare from Israel, like in the United States and Europe. And then they would just do an infidela and the Jews would be annihilated. That's what Noam Chomsky wants. That's what he advocates. They would just do
right.
He would just destroy all the borders of Israel, say that everyone needs to be put in kibbutz, all the people that come in, all the illegal immigrants that aren't even Palestinians, like fucking Egyptians and Syrian refugees and shit that will just flood the country.
Syrian refugees from Nigeria?
Yeah, Syrian refugees from Nigeria will fucking flood Israel. You'll say, now put these Syrian refugees from Nigeria into the kibbutz, and then all of them will just be like start an infidela, and then the Jews will be annihilated. That's what Noam Chomsky wants. And of course, Benjamin Netanyahu does not have control over himself. He is a figurehead, and every single action of Israel is directly controlled by the CIA. If you read Failed States, he really does believe, his book Failed States, he really does believe that Israel is not a real country. And something he'll say is that Israel and the United States are the same country. And
yeah, I remember that.
He says Israel and the United States are the same country, and that when they vote in the United Nations, it's the equivalent of Russia and the Ukraine voting and having 2 seats.
Well, that's kind of ironic given recent events.
Do you remember anything you want to bitch about Noam Chomsky about?
Just yeah, that was kind of my biggest issue with. Is he kind of the poster boy of the socialism of the 21st century?
Yeah, I mean, Hugo Chavez, when he went to the UN, like, was holding up. What was it? Failed states, or was it like hegemony or annihilation or something? I gotta look it up. It was one of his books, and he said, like, this is the best book ever. You all have to read it. This is the absolute reality. And then he shilled extremely heavily for him until, like, the writing was on the wall when the oil prices dived down and Venezuela went to shit after Chavez died. Like, up until that point. And I'm sure he, like, shills in the same way he shills for Pol Pot now.
So what does he say, that there was no, like, Cambodian, that the Khmer Rouge didn't happen, or like?
Well, first of all, my position on Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge genocide is that the genocide was extremely overused, or the genocide was extremely exaggerated in terms of numbers, because the idea that 1/4 of the entire country died, I mean, I guess they didn't bury the dead, so maybe it's true. The joke's on me, but it's kind of like, it's kind of absurd to me. So I would always go with the lower ends on that. And it wasn't a genocide of ethnic Cambodians. They were very anti-Vietnamese, and they eventually invaded Vietnam partially because of their extremely anti-Vietnamese stance, despite Vietnam being.
How did they think that was going to work out?
Well, first of all, they're basically like Ted Kaczynski in power. They're like fucking Luddites. They're armed by fucking.
No, but how did they think they were going to beat Vietnam?
I don't fucking know. Okay, I don't know. What I know about the Khmer Rouge is what I read in Noam Chomsky and what I read on Wikipedia and what I got in high school. It's like, I haven't read a book on the Khmer Rouge proper.
No, I think they're just probably LARPers.
They're fucking crazy LARPers, dude. They're like literally fucking Luddite gnat socks. So, but everything that, like, Cambodia is not guilty for anything it did, right? Like, everything that bad happened in Cambodia is because the CIA did it, according to Noam Chomsky. Okay, two things. So we had a commenter that's our friend. So Noam Chomsky's made a lot of money from his books and investments, probably based off his books. Noam Chomsky shelters his money offshore to prevent paying taxes on it in the United States.
Right.
So every single American citizen that you meet on the street, they are hyper against offshoring capital to prevent it from being taxed, including him, but yet he does it. Only very doctrinaire libertarians are against it. Every single Republican you will meet and every single Democrat are grossly opposed to it. Everybody is, but he does it anyway. And then another thing is that Noam Chomsky didn't support even Bernie Sanders. Noam Chomsky advocates for, he doesn't even advocate for the populist wing of the Democratic Party. He doesn't advocate for any, like, he doesn't advocate for, like, using agorism as an anarchist would, or using propaganda of the deed, or any anarchist things, because he claims to be an anarchist. Doesn't advocate general strike. He advocates supporting the Democratic Party, and moreover, so he doesn't even advocate supporting, like, the social democrat, like social democracy or democratic socialism or socialism of the 21st century inside of the Democratic Party. He doesn't even advocate supporting Bernie Sanders. He advocated supporting Hillary fucking Clinton. And he claims to be an anarcho-syndicalist. Another thing that I really hate about about Noam Chomsky is that all the memes that Catalonia did nothing wrong come from him. Like
in the Spanish Civil War.
Yes, the idea that they committed mass killings is basically at, like, one step above Holocaust denial. And that's all because of his immense influence.
Was that one of the main places for the White Terror? Sorry, the Red Terror?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, they like dug up priests and like they dug up corpses of dead priests and put them on parade and like desecrated them. Like that's the tier. They were like killing farmers who wouldn't collectivize. Like,
so sorry. So he claims that the nationalists killed like.
No, he claims that the anarcho-syndicalists in the Spanish Civil War never killed anybody extrajudicially. That they never.
They were good boys who didn't do nothing.
Yeah, and he doesn't even talk about them other than to be like, their dick juice tastes so good. I love the taste of their cum. That's literally, if you read anything about the Spanish Civil War that he wrote, that's all it is. The cum, the dick juice of the anarcho-syndicalists is the best thing I've ever tasted. T. Noam Chomsky.
Him supporting Hillary is really funny.
No, he fucking supported Hillary. Like, people, you would be at like, I'm sure you have to pay to see him. Like, I think you probably have to pay, which is hilarious.
Oh,
so when like when the shit libs show up to ask him questions after he gets done talking about how non-whites have no agency,
and selling autographed copies of his book,
at
a markup
and marked up price, then they're like, hey, do you support Bernie Sanders? Do you think what the DNC is doing against Bernie Sanders is explicit cheating? Will you use your power as a celebrity to stand up for Bernie Sanders? He'd be like, fuck Bernie Sanders, Hillary.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. There were so many fucking people who shilled for Hillary. Didn't a lot of those people previously attack Hillary when she ran against Obama?
I don't. I was like in 8th grade and 7th grade. I'd have to go back to their news articles.
Right. I know the Young Turks did. Did the Young Turks support Hillary or Bernie?
No, they supported Bernie really hard, didn't they?
I don't remember.
Yukio Mishima is one of the greatest humans of the 20th century. He says he did his justification for disliking Bernie is that Bernie would be in the same position that Trump would be in, where he wouldn't be able to whip the Democratic Party, and it would be better to have a Democratic Party led by somebody that will get votes for the Democratic Party. So that doesn't make any sense anyway, because Noam Chomsky would probably believe that the United States over time, I don't know if he would acknowledge like the Great Replacements because of this, but he would think that like democratic socialism would be rising throughout the United States as an ideology. So if Bernie wins, that's good. Regardless if he can whip the Democratic Party in the House of Representatives and the Senate to do his bidding, wouldn't he view that as a net positive? Evidently, no. No, he wouldn't. Like, he's just said, they won't vote for Bernie's policies, so don't vote for Bernie. Like, he wouldn't, like, first of all, if you were Noam Chomsky, wouldn't you see the immense power of the fucking Supreme Court and be like, well, regardless, we'll get some of what Hillary would get anyway with Bernie, regardless, and then we'll get better, like, appointments from Bernie. Like, it's just so fucking stupid. Anyway, we're kind of like,
yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
I'm going to create a blog where I'm going to post long posts that I've written about political and historical topics and philosophical topics, and then I'm going to. Should I start taking these and posting them on my channel too?
I don't know. You can if you want. You're welcome to download this.
Considering it, but I'm going to at least share all those on the blog and advertise them through my Nazbol videos. And then the second thing is go out and buy. No chance. Really, go out and buy it. Get the paperback because it's so much nicer to have an actual paperback in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to do an Amazon review for him too. It's a great book. Seriously, it has heart and it takes no prisoners.
Thanks, man. Anyways, good night, everybody. Have a good